Hello, guys, and welcome to Combat Corner Top 5s. Today, we have our top 5 predicted fighters for 2024, going in chronological order from 5th to 1st, on who we think is most likely to win Fighter of the Year in 2024. So I'm going to kick things off, and I've got my list right here and ready to rumble. I'm going to go with an honorable mention first, and that honorable mention is Tom Aspinall. Now, I think the heavyweight division is too crazy at the moment for him to get enough fights under his belt or win the belt within 2024. That's why I'm putting him as an honorable mention, because I think it's too hard for him to fight enough to actually get to that point. But I think if it was a little bit more laid out, I think that he would be up there and he could get to that thing. So that's my honorable mention. At number 5, I'm going to say Brandon Moreno. So I'm predicting that Brandon Moreno is going to have a huge year. I think he's going to go into this fight with Brandon Royval. I think he's going to blow him out of the water, finish him. I think he's going to have another fight after that, and he's going to win in great fashion. And I think he's going to win the belt back towards the end of the year, and he's finally going to beat Pantoja. That's my prediction. He's at number 5, so I don't think he's the most likely, but I think he's up there with a chance. At number 4, I have Englishman Leon Edwards. I think Leon's going to have a good year. I think he's going to fight twice. I think he's first going to fight Bilal Muhammad. I think he's going to beat him pretty convincingly. I think he's going to finish him. I think he's got a point to prove in that fight. And then I think he's going to fight again, maybe Shavkat Rakhmonov, maybe someone else. And I think he's going to beat them too. And I think he's going to make it look relatively easy. And we're all going to be very impressed. He's my number 4 pick. At number 3, I have Merab Dvalishvili. I think he's going to make pretty easy work of Henry Cejudo, and I really think that he's going to win the belt by the end of the year, unless he gets completely shat on by the UFC, and they kind of don't let that happen. I think he absolutely dominates Sean O'Malley, unless he gets clipped. But I think he's going to win the belt by the end of the year. I think he has 2 or 3 fights this year, and I think one of them's going to be for the belt, and I think he's going to get it done pretty convincingly. So he's my number 3 pick. Then I have a pretty standard one, Islam Makhachev. I think he's going to come back from his injury, fresh out of Ramadan, relatively quickly after 300, maybe 301, 302. And I think he's going to make pretty light work of whoever he fights next. And then I think he's going to fight again before the end of the year, and I think he's just going to do the same. I just really don't see anyone in the lightweight division, whether it be an up-and-coming guy or someone he's already fought. I really don't see them causing him any problems, and I'm putting him in at number 2 for my Fighter of the Year picks. Number 1, this is a pretty controversial one. I'm going with Israel Adesanya. That's my number 1 pick, who I'm predicting to be Fighter of the Year 2024. So why I think that that's going to happen. I believe that Izzy's going to come back round 300, 301, 302. He's going to fight the winner of Sean vs. Dricus, and he's going to make it look easy on his return. Fired up Izzy. He's going to make it look easy. Then I believe he's going to fight one more time, making it 2 fights this year, and he's going to make his first title defense look easy, and then he's going to walk off into the sunset as a 3-time middleweight champion, winning twice against So they're my top 5 picks. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jackson to debate or maybe agree with some of my picks. What are your thoughts there, Jackie boy?
Well, we haven't compared notes before this. I want
haven't.
to make that abundantly obvious to
Live reaction.
the 2 people watching at home. And I just want to say that it is blowing me away that we have absolutely none of the same picks.
Really?
None
Oh,
of them.
Okay.
No fighter. Not even like, oh, I had this guy at number 3 instead of we have none of
Nothing.
them.
Really?
Yeah.
Not even the honorable mention? No?
I don't have an honorable mention.
Okay.
But I think if I were to have an honorable mention, I like where you're going. Tom Aspinall, yeah, I agree. There's just not enough room for him to make enough noise this year.
Yep.
The whole John Jones, Stipe Miocic thing is really obviously holding him up. And whether or not he defends his interim belt, like we've briefly spoken on before in our podcast, I don't see it happening either. But I think if he were given the chance, yeah, he's on it. He's on a hell of a roll
impressive
at the moment. Very impressive guy.
Mm.
Brandon Moreno. I like what you're saying there. Look, I would love to see him win the belt off Pantoja. I think he makes a lot more noise in the flyweight division than some of these other guys at the top. And I think, again, like we've spoken on before, that's what the flyweight division needs. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. Oh, I'm struggling with some of these other ones though, mate. I've got to say, Leon at 4. I like Leon Edwards. I really do. Whether or not he is going to, maybe have as shocking results as some of the guys that I have down in terms of maybe coming out of nowhere.
I think I know who you're gonna.
Well, I don't know if you do, but look, yeah, I like Leon Edwards. I think I agree with you. I think he gets it done against Bilal. Whoever he fights next, whether it be Shavkat or someone else who's kind of making a bit of noise there, that will probably be a trickier fight for him than whatever his name is, Bilal Muhammad. So, yeah, that makes a bit of sense too. Merab, a very impressive fighter. However, look, Sean O'Malley has proven that he can deal with wrestlers when he needs to. We've seen it against Merab's main training partner, in Sterling. So look, whether he can, I don't know, switch things up and put a bit more calculated pressure on O'Malley than we saw Sterling do, that might work for him. However, it's very up in the air. Yeah. Islam Makhachev, I see him fighting once this year.
Yeah, my pick was banking on 2. Like, if he fights twice. If it's 1, it just can't be right.
I think there are some holes in this guy's game that have been exposed in his last couple of fights. Maybe not so much his last fight against Volk, but definitely the one before that. And I think a bigger natural lightweight can really take advantage of that. So that's the reason he's not on my list, and it might surprise you who is instead. Israel Adesanya. I can see the argument there. It makes a lot of sense. He's going to have a fire under his belly. If he makes a return this year instead of 2027,
yeah,
that's obviously a joke. If he does come back, look, I can see him being a massive threat to whoever is the last man standing out of that Drakus and Sean death match. So yeah, that makes some sense. However,
you just don't see it happening.
I don't know. He had some things to say about his last fight against Sean. He said that since he's watched the fight back, he has now
figured it out.
He's figured it out, which I think is probably one of his more naive statements to have made. Personally, I'm not a fighter, but just like, if you can't figure it out in there, don't you think they're going to bring something else next time? And to say, now that the fight's over, I can see how I can win. Like, yeah, righto. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to give you my top 5.
Right, let's go.
And I'm going to show you how different they are.
I'm very intrigued.
I do not have an honorable mention, like I said. My number 5 is someone who, look, it is on a wing and a prayer that this guy gets Fighter of the Year. But Benoit Saint Denis, okay? I can see him getting it done against DP, against Dustin Poirier. And then this guy is potentially going to be maybe a backup fighter on an Islam Makhachev title fight. I think this guy gives problems to anyone in the top 5 at the moment. Whether he gets it done against them, I'm not sure. That's why he's my number 5. But if this guy goes in there, beats Dustin Poirier, boom, backup fighter on a title fight, I think this guy could be a really big breakthrough name of 2024 and could be potentially looking at some awards at the end of the year. That's why he's my number 5. But moving on, my number 4, Sean O'Malley. I don't think the UFC are going to look after Merab Dvalishvili. I think that they are going to ride out this kind of money kind of thing that they've got with the promotion and kind of trying to bring this guy to a McGregor-ish level. I think he gets it done in fairly easy fashion against Chito Vera. And then I can see them booking him against Sandhagen, because stylistically that fight makes a lot of sense. And if you go in there and you beat Chito Vera and Sandhagen and you have some big moments while doing it, I can see him being fighter of the year. Now, this one is going to come as no surprise to you, but he is at number 3, which may surprise you. Sean Strickland.
Yep. I was expecting that somewhere.
I want him to beat Dricus. I think he can beat Dricus. I think he's got all the tools to beat Dricus. And whoever he comes back and fights next, I think he's going to be just as motivated. Just as, like, if it is Israel Adesanya, I can see him getting it done all over again. I think there's an argument to say that we have gone past the prime of Izzy. And Sean has really shown us in his last couple of fights that he's just getting started. And there are massive jumps in his game in these last couple of fights. So I can see him getting it done too. And my number 2, I think this guy will fight for the belt before the end of the year. Unfortunately, I see him beating Charles Oliveira in their booked matchup. So yes, I am talking about Arman Tsarukyan. I think this guy, he's already had a close fight with Islam before. He's obviously had a lot of growth since then. We've seen him absolutely demolish some guys in the top 10. So I really like this guy. I think he has all of the skills. He's got incredible power in his hands, and obviously really impressive skills on the ground too. So I think Arman Tsarukyan gets it done against Charles Oliveira, and then potentially by the end of the year, we see him beating the shit out of Islam Makhachev as well.
Okay.
Now my number 1. I'm surprised this guy wasn't on your list because he is an absolute killer. And we talk about him all the time here. I'm talking about Stoneface Alex Pereira. Yeah, so this guy's not booked currently. There is a lot of talk about him versus Jamahal Hill. And I think there is a really decent chance we see him fight again before the end of the year as well. Whether that be in light heavyweight or heavyweight, who knows? But either way, I think this guy has the makings of being an even bigger star than what we've seen him as so far. And I can see him taking out Fighter of the Year. He is my number 1 pick for the 2024 UFC Fighter of the Year.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think we both mixed in a little bit of wishful thinking with logic in both of our picks. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
We both kind of picked some that we want and also picked some that were like, this is probably going to happen. Alex Pereira, I did think about him. I definitely thought about him. The only thing that stopped me from picking him was that I think there's some unfavorable matchups for him out there. If he moves to heavyweight, I really don't see him getting the win. I just don't see it. I don't know, maybe, but I just don't see him beating those really, really big guys, especially a guy like Tom with that speed, or a guy like John with the wrestling. It's going to be tough. Jamahal Hill, even, that's going to be a very difficult challenge. And Ankalaev's waiting right there. That's a fucking really difficult challenge for him. That's the only reason I didn't pick him. He could win those fights. Definitely could win those fights. I'm not saying he won't. But that's the only reason I didn't pick him. I think there's a lot of challenges out there for him. Other than that, Benoit Saint-Denis, I think people are a little bit too hot on this guy. I know he looks really, really good, but he's had moments of vulnerability in the UFC so far, and he's never faced a top guy. Yes, he's fighting Dustin next, and if he gets that done, that does prove that he belongs, but he hasn't done that yet. So there's nothing I've seen of him that and like you said, he's number 5 for a reason. Number 4 was Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley, again, I want to see him beat Chito. I want to see him beat Merab. I just see a few holes that I think can get exploited. And like you said, he beat Sterling, who's Merab's main training partner. So that's a good signal that he can definitely get it done against Merab. But for some reason, I just don't see it happening if Merab is the guy up against him. Sandhagen's a tough matchup for him. I just don't see too many really winnable fights for him in the top 15. And I've doubted him before, and I've been wrong. So no, maybe doubting him now is going to end up wrong. I don't know. Who was number 3 again?
Sean.
Sean.
Other Sean.
I thought you were maybe going to put him number 2 or 1. But I can see why you put him at 3. There's a lot of risks there for him. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air. That's what makes this pretty hard to pick. But I rate that pick. He's been on a tear and he's improving constantly. So if he can get this win against Dricus tomorrow, yeah, there's a definite chance of that happening. So good pick. Number 2, Ayman Tsarukyan. We've kind of gone opposite here.
We have.
I personally think he's going to beat Islam will beat the winner of Charles and Ayman, and then he'll fight maybe Justin Gaethje at the end of the year. That's the 2 fights that I see happening. I think he wins both those fights. I just think he is, like, don't get me wrong, Ayman is amazing, but he's lost a couple of times and he's been out wrestled before, and Islam did beat him close, but he beat him the first time, and Islam's constantly improving, and so I just don't see him having that year this year, but I could be wrong. Anyway, there are top 5 picks. Let us know what you think in the comments. We'd love to know your top 5 picks. Tear us apart. Let us know how wrong we are or how right we are. Don't forget to leave a like, share this around, and
check out our full-length podcast.
Check out our podcast. The link will be down below. Most recent one. Thank you very much, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
See you later.
See you later.